Welcome back to Small College Conversations. I'm Kristen Eargle with College.town. I'm joined by Ian Potter, Georgia Gwinnett College Director of Athletics. Ian, thanks for being on.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Looking forward to it.
We have a ton to talk about. You've started new sports. There's a lot of momentum. Your teams are going to postseason play, but you've been in the role for about 2 years now. You served as the deputy AD and then moved into that AD role. What would you say is the biggest difference in moving in that chair?
A lot of them. I think me just personally is like I'm getting a lot more gray. Like at least this last 2 years, I'm like looking gray, more gray than I ever have before. But there's obviously pros and cons. I think the biggest thing is I'm in the room now. It takes a long time just to get in the room to have those kind of bigger conversations with the institution. Obviously, putting out a lot more fires, a lot more public, appearances, speeches, all that kind of stuff that goes with it. Dealing with personnel changes, hiring, firing, staff performance and expectations, things that like as a deputy, didn't have those kind of conversations a lot with our staff members. And so that's a big part of the job. And that comes with a lot of stress as well. And then I think the overall thing is I'm kind of now the gatekeeper for our culture, right? So I have to ensure that we're continuing to be who we are and what we've been and where we're going. And when I see things, correct them or talk to my staff about what our culture is and just making sure that they are also kind of ambassadors of that culture at all times. So those are just a few of kind of the things I think for the most part have changed since I'm in this seat.
I've interviewed a lot of athletic directors in the last 4 years. I don't think anyone has worded it that well with gatekeeper of culture. I'm going to come back to that. I love that. Okay, you took over for Darin Wilson, an NAIA Hall of Famer, started the athletic department before transitioning to VP of advancement. What are some of those things that you soaked in and you learned through your time of working with him?
Yeah, I mean, I probably sound like him to some people because I do talk about culture a lot. And that's one of the things when he left, he was like, you got to keep our culture because that's what makes us successful. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. But he's one that I literally talk to almost every day. He got to my office before I got here this morning. So I'm knocking on my door and he's already there waiting on me. So I talk to him all the time, which is great to have somebody like him that's still my mentor and still I can vent to. And he lets me work things out. He doesn't always give me kind of his opinion or his answers because he wants me to deal with it. But man, there's so many kind of nuggets that he's left. I think the biggest thing, and just not even necessarily related to athletics, but just one of the things, and a lot of people do this in practice, but literally waiting 24 hours before you respond to an email with emotions or even phone calls. And that's huge for me because I am kind of one that's like, I like to just go and tackle the problems or solve solutions. And sometimes I have an ability to maybe read into things that shouldn't be read into. And so given that 24 hours kind of clears your mind a little bit and puts you in a different space, different mindset, gives you a little bit different perspective. So that was hugely important and great advice. His mantra that he had here was everything matters. And again, that's a snippet of culture that we kind of talk about. And it's like, you see a piece of trash, you pick it up. You're not too good to go blow leaves off the tennis court. Whatever it is, all of those little things add up. So everything matters is something that we've kind of kept that he initiated here. Another thing that I think is important for somebody like me, because I think I'm unique. It's getting more and more common, but I still think I'm unique because I'm an athletic director who has never been a college coach. Mm-hmm. And so that creates some things there where I have to be able to have a perspective on the coach's side of things. Like I've always been a staff member, so I tend to protect staff. But he left, when he left, he was like, Ian, one thing you're going to need to continue to work on is understanding the coach's side of it and make sure you're seeing that too. And then I think anybody knows him has probably heard him say this, and this goes in my mind all the time, with kind of leadership and management and managing people, is basically, you can be as hands off as possible, but as hands on when needed. And so that's something that I always kind of gravitate to because I'm not a micromanager, but you can't be so away where you don't know what's going on. And that's kind of when that being the gatekeeper of your culture, you have to be plugged into what's going on with your staff without being a micromanager. So those are just some snippets that he's kind of left me.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about you now. You were a student athlete at Clemson track and field, and then you got your start at UAB. How does that shape your perspective now? Obviously, you played at the P4 level, and how much do you sort of adapt that to what you do when you build out this athletics program?
Yeah, well, I was there a while ago, right? So things have changed. Clemson's even changed since I was there. I mean, Dabo just blew that whole place up for the better. But I think obviously it was a wonderful experience, and my time there as a student athlete, I still think about today. And what I mean by that is when I try to lead or the vision of what we're doing here, it really, and this is going to sound cliche, but it really does come back to the student athlete experience. And for me, what I like to think about is I'm from Georgia. I still live in Georgia, and I get a lot of people who are like, man, why didn't you go to Georgia? And I kind of haven't had an opportunity to do that. So people ask me, if I had to do it all over again, would I go to Georgia? Would I go to Clemson? I'm always like, without a doubt, Clemson. And so I think about that now in my role where I want our GGC student athletes 10, 15 years down the line, when somebody asks them, hey, tell me about your experience. If you had to do this all over again, would you choose GGC? I want that to be a resounding yes every time. And so that needs to be the focus of what we do every day, whether it's staff, coaches, campus, me, other student athletes, alumni, is really trying to buy into creating that best student athlete experience that we can do here. I think for me, actually, when I was at Augusta, shaped a little bit more of kind of who I am and what I'm about. That really opened my eyes to more of like that small college athletic that I personally like. I like having a smaller staff. I like wearing more hats. I like having that direct contact with almost everybody in the office. Most of my coaches, win or loss, they like to call me after the game and just talk through things. And so I like that part of it. I like, kind of being the go-to person for some of our staff members who are still up and coming, still learning. So that is kind of what shaped a little bit who I am. And I think it also shaped what Georgia Gwinnett College, because when I was hired here, I was one of the first hires. I was hired to create the compliance unit, the academic unit, kind of game ops. And I really took a lot of what I did at Augusta and brought it here. So we have always kind of operated almost under a Division II model. We're staffed similar to Division II. I was driving our coaches crazy by making them do things that they don't have to do in the NAIA, but I was just so used to making them do it in Division II. So we've really kind of used that D2 model for us, the way we do things administratively, procedurally, and just kind of our overall kind of aspect of how we do stuff here at GDC.
Let's talk a little bit more about you. You earned your doctorate of education in educational leadership and administration from Georgia Southern. You did a dissertation on academic motivation among D1 football student athletes throughout the academic year. Obviously, there's a difference in the and what's going on there at Clemson or your time there versus the Grizzlies student athletes. But what correlates to all of that, and kind of just walk me through kind of what you experienced there.
Well, I'm not going to lie. When I finished that dissertation, I was like, I never want to talk about this ever again. I don't want to read it. I don't want to read a book, nothing. I was so over it, just how much work you put into that and all that. But it was a great experience, not just learning how to do that and learning a bunch, but for me, being able to go back to Clemson, and I did my survey on those football players. I always loved Dabo just because he graciously gave me that. He don't even know who I am, but he let me come in there and survey those football players twice there in their season, which was amazing. But it's a little different here. NAIA, you really have to certify after every semester. So you're always kind of thinking about eligibility. So it's just a little bit different here because our student athletes always have to be motivated, because after the fall, they have to be certified again to play in the spring. After spring, certified for the fall. So to me, it's like they're always motivated to be eligible, and then obviously motivated to make good grades, because we talk about that a lot in our culture.
Okay, so nearly all of your teams had advanced this past year, if I'm right, to the NAIA national tournaments.
Yeah.
When you look at the infrastructure and things that are being built and things that are in place to make some of that possible, what would you pinpoint?
Two things, really. I think it's always culture and it's always people. We talk a lot about just our standard of excellence. We talk about we don't really have rules. We have standards. When our first year of the meeting, first year of kind of orientation meeting with our student athletes, I get up there, and a lot of ADs don't like to talk this way, but I talk about winning. It's important. So one of our standards is like, we are going to win championships during your time here. One of our standards is you are going to get a 3.0 or higher here. So it's just kind of like everybody understands what they're getting into when they're here. Our standard is our standard. I talk a lot about that too. And I talk, especially some of our younger coaches, our standard is our standard, and it's okay. I tell them all the time, it's okay if you have student athletes who don't meet that standard. This is not the place for everybody, right? Our standard is so high. It's okay. We'll help you find. We still care about you. We'll help you find somewhere else to go, if that maybe has a lower standard than us. But we're not changing our standard for student athletes, coaches, anybody. So I think having that basic understanding is huge for us. Having coaches who believe that, who buy in, who are just ambassadors of our G-Claw, which is our logo, and the understanding of what it means to be here, the love of GDC. I've kind of been asked the question a little bit about like hiring and how does that work? And I kind of let our staff and coaches do that. I mean, I always tell like new coaches or potential people, I'm like, you can pick anybody on our staff, and I'm comfortable with you going and asking a million questions to them, because at the end of the day, I know they have a similar belief and similar vision. So I'll let our coaches and staff kind of sell this place. I don't necessarily have to. And I think that's the big part of why we're also successful on the court and of course off the court is because the people here are the coaches. And then, obviously you got to still resource them appropriately to be competitive, but that culture and that people, hiring great coaches is all part of it.
So you would say those are probably the key pillars to your culture. I mean, those are the things that if someone said, describe your culture in a couple of words, that would be it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I think about that too, is like there's kind of, I think about culture in a kind of couple separate ways too. Like as a person and a human, we have a culture here that I want to create that's like, you want to come to work. It's fun. You like GGC. You're part of the family. You have success goals that I can help you achieve. So that's like one culture of like when coaches or staff ask, hey, how's it like to work, or was it like to work there, right? We have that culture. And then we have like our culture of like what student athletes is about. And that's, the culture of excellence and everything we do academic, athletically, the standards of championships, the standards of reaching the highest GPA, having student athletes understand that when they wear that G-Claw outside of, or anywhere really, but again, they're brand ambassadors. They are literally showcasing who we are and what we do 24/7. So there's kind of two levels of culture, and that's what we talk about that a lot. And I'm big on kind of talking things throughout. We had a staff kind of retreat last summer, and I literally just say, all right, I know we always throw this word out of like we always throw culture out, like, oh, we have a great culture in this, but I literally challenged everybody and talked about, well, give me some words. Like, what do you think our culture is? Not what you think people think we are. What do you think we are? What do we want to be? Because you got to talk that out sometimes, because people have different definitions of things. And I think another interesting thing is like trust. And when we did this like trust exercise with the staff and coaches, and I had them write down 3 words to define trust, and every single coach and staff member had 3 different words. So when I say, hey, trust me, or I trust you, each coach and staff member may have a different perspective of what trust is. So getting that understanding of what even just trust is helps with building culture, because now we understand what culture is and what we want our culture to be.
Wow, that's powerful. Okay, so you launched men's and women's basketball. What a heavy lift there. What were some of the biggest challenges of launching two new programs simultaneously?
Well, one, it wasn't just me. I'm gonna put it like it's like anything, you know. I try to tell people, because people like to ask me like, what's my job like, and it really is like a team. Like I'm almost like the coach, and we have assistant coaches and we have student athletes. So we do everything as a team, and starting basketball from ground up was amazing. I feel like it's one of my best accomplishments I've had in my career yet, and really most fulfilling. Our inaugural game that we had, I remember texting my staff like at midnight and just saying like that was literally like the best pinnacle of almost my career of just the starting from nothing to get to where we were with finishing just the first game. It takes a lot of people. Obviously, you know, you got to have support of your campus and your president. It was really my president's vision. That's like, I want to bring basketball to this campus. So she went out and was able to kind of get a convocation center going, and we got one built. And I was on all right, it's my opportunity to start it. And so hiring the right coaches, again, we talk about people is huge. Want to get coaches, and we had tons. I think we had over 250 applicants for our men's basketball coach. So I mean, we ran the gamut of former D1 coaches to JUCO coach, all over the place, and the two we landed on were outstanding. Again, outstanding people, great coaches, but the love they already had for GDC, because they knew who we are and they know what we're about. And so hiring the right coaches was huge. For me, I had a few staff members that came from places that had basketball, which was huge. So it's kind of like that old thing of like, hire your weaknesses, so to speak. So I mean, I haven't seen basketball since I was at Augusta, and that was 12, 14 years ago. And so having staff members who understand what basketball should look like, and then bring it to our level was huge. And so one of the things I did is I took our whole staff to the University of North Georgia basketball game, and I said, they were so gracious. They let us get in there 2 or 3 hours before the game to see everything behind the scenes. And so we were all taking notes and came out of there like, yes, this is what we wanted. How do we get it like this? And then basically just, started kind of by scratch going, this is everything they had. This is what we need to do. And literally for almost a year, we met every week, dotting I's, crossing T's, trying to come up with everything possible that can happen. And then here we are with the inaugural game, and here we are, a couple months later, still playing basketball, and just super excited to have that on our campus.
What are some of the areas of focus for you for basketball, both men's and women's, for the next year? I mean, kind of expectations, obviously, or even maybe some of the obstacles that come up that you didn't see right here, but you're working through?
Yeah. So the first part of the question, I don't know how familiar you are with just Gwinnett County, but we're just a hotbed of I mean, you could almost just recruit Gwinnett County students, and I think you could win a lot of games. So we're just in a great county for basketball and other sports. So I always kind of had a feeling that we were going to be able to be successful pretty early, especially when we got the coaches that we got. And obviously you want to resource well enough where you think that you can compete. But for us moving forward, it's really just like we're still kind of growing with it. Like we do have those ups and downs, those ebbs and flows of things are going great or things like we need to work on. And so it's just a kind of a daily grind of it. Basketball is another kind of one of those sports that's just going to help us build our brand, right? And so it continues to get our G Claw, which is our logo, out there, amongst the United States, so people can see. I'm super excited about postseason coming up, and hopefully we can advance the postseason and kind of going from there. We cracked the top 25 a couple weeks ago for our men's team, which was really exciting. So just continuing, to build on that success. I think hosting championships is huge, where we're able to host our conference championship our first year in. We're already going to be able to host it, which is really cool for us. And then just continue to try to resource and give the coaches everything they need to be successful. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, hoping to do in the next few years with basketball.
Now, going back to what you said earlier, when you finished your dissertation, you said, I don't want to read anything else. I don't want to do anything else with that. Would you ever consider adding another sport? You're like, oh, no, I'm done here.
Well, I think it's inevitable. I think who we are and the size of our institution, I'm just one of somebody who's going to help make that decision. I would not be the one making that decision. Our president obviously is very involved, and she loves athletics, and she supports me greatly, which is awesome. So we would just continue to have those conversations as we continue to grow and kind of get through this little baby phase of basketball. It might be something that we look into again. Like I said, I think people ask me this all the time, and growth is inevitable. I have to be careful because what I say turns into a rumor, and next thing you know, they think we're starting sports. But what I try to say is, like, it's inevitable. I mean, growth is inevitable. We're going to continue to grow. Again, we're in a county. We have over 1 million people in our county. And there's sports that would do really well here, I think. And then obviously we have, some facilities that we would look for, say, okay, this is the kind of sport we could start without having to build something new. So I do think it's inevitable. Short, long term, I don't know, is something that the president and I kind of often talk about and figure out, hey, if we were to add a sport, what would it be? What would it look like? So those conversations do happen.
What are some of those trending topics that you keep your eye on from a national perspective that could really have an impact there at GGC?
Yeah, well, the one last week that was big in Division II was the fifth-year season of eligibility. I'm sure you're familiar with that, but that's been just a huge kind of topic of conversation among NCAA and Division II. And I'm not sure you heard, but they kind of tabled it until 2028 to figure out where they're going to go from there. So that's something that we talk about a lot in NAIA. I'm on the board of directors for the NAIA ADA, which is the Athletic Directors Association. So that takes up a lot of our conversation. And we were waiting to kind of see what happens with Division II. So I'm anxious to kind of get back in some of those rooms to kind of figure out what direction we're going to go in terms of the NAIA. I think we don't necessarily do what the D2 is doing, and we don't not do what the D2 is doing, but it just gives us another data point to kind of make an informed decision. So that's a big one. And then the transfer portal is always huge. A lot of people, when you talk about the Power Four, and there's a lot of kind of negativity, I would say, going on with the transfer portal because of the way it's happened with the timing and the date and all that. But for us in the NAIA, I think it's something that we can really capitalize on because I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, so don't hold me to them. But I saw an article yesterday, and it was saying that I think there's still over like 1,500 or 1,600 student athletes that enter the transfer portal that don't go anywhere. They don't end up going anywhere to play. And so in my brain, I'm like, I wonder if they're NAIA eligible and our level to play. And so that's a topic there that I think we as NAIA still need to work through and try to get access to that transfer portal so we can have access to some of these students, because I think there sometimes is a negative stigma or a misnomer on the NAIA and the level of athletics that we have. And we certainly, there could be some student athletes in that transfer portal that could benefit both ways, NAIA and coming here and playing.
Final question for you. Looking ahead, what's next on the strategic horizon for athletics there?
Yeah. Well, like I was saying earlier, we're always having conversations of where we go and what GGC looks like. With us just starting basketball, it's going to be a little bit before we add sports, but I think they're not too far down the line if we go that route. We have a wonderful convocation center that has a basketball arena, obviously, and so it's a perfect place to maybe have volleyball one day if that's the route we would go with. But we're going to continue to see our place in the NAIA. Continue to meet with the president and make sure that we're doing right by our student athletes, right by our community, and make sure we continue to position ourselves to be one of the premier small college institutions in America.
Ian, it's been a joy to get to know you and hear about your plans. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. Have a nice day.